everyone, it's Neil Bennett from the Worship Foundation again here, and welcome to our second video in this series, Worship Without Singing. Thank you for your comments and your questions and your feedback. It's been good to hear what you're thinking at the moment, the questions you're asking, and we'll try and pick up on some of those in these videos. And maybe the most important bit of feedback I had was from one of my friends who says, Neil, you need to chill out a bit online. You're not giving the State of the Union address. So this is me chilling out a bit online. And by way of introduction for this, it's worth saying that I've been someone who's loved singing in worship pretty much all my life. I was a worship pastor for 20 years. I've been leading worship for, well, I was going to say 35 years. It's probably more like 40 years now. And I've pretty much loved every minute of it. So even this phrase, worship without singing, it's a challenging one for me. And so maybe it's not surprising that I'm growing greater empathy at the moment with those who have always found singing in worship difficult, even impossible. I was speaking to one of my friends who's also a worship leader this morning, and she said it's as though we're having to reset everything we've thought and felt and done in worship right now. And no one would have wished this time on anyone, but that could be one of the things that's good that's coming out of it. Having said all that, I think it's probably true to say that many people get most of their theology from the songs they sing. And songs, of course, are powerful. They're powerful. In many ways, the job of a song is to be powerful and memorable. There have been many studies recently that show how singing resonates deeply with almost every aspect of our human existence. Heart and soul and body and memory and emotions and relationships. And this power in singing is a gift, but it's also a challenge, I think. Powerful songs can help people learn, but for this to be a good thing relies on the fact that those songs are actually full of goodness. In my mind, it's quite possible that the future health of songwriting for worship will rest not so much on our music but on our words. I rarely hear bad music in songs that are released at the moment, but our lyrics could probably use a little attention. Even mine. So the absence of singing in our gatherings at the moment gives us the chance, maybe even forces us in a good way, to think more deeply and carefully for a while about our words. And one way we could do this is to explore liturgies that have served the church in worship for many years, maybe even centuries. And these liturgies, they were crafted. They were crafted with theological depth. They were pastorally sensitive. They considered how people were going to think and feel and the situations they were in when they were going to be saying them. They were often prophetic. They had prophetic insight and have stood the test of time. But I imagine that for some of us, that word liturgy may be a little frightening. I know that in many of our churches, said liturgy is hardly ever used and maybe even thought of as irrelevant. Although I suspect that for even the newest of churches, they'll use well-crafted phrases and prayers that are pretty much the same every time they meet. So maybe it's just that we don't like calling it liturgy. Even so, you may find the idea of said liturgy quite daunting. So it's always good to know that said liturgy has been a staple diet of worship for communities for generations and generations. And maybe this is because said liturgy is one way we can involve as many people as possible in the room at the same time in our worship. probably more people than singing does. And I think at this time, the ability to do that is going to be really, really important. So yes, at this time, let's explore some of the season liturgy of the church. But I would get even more excited to see our own communities start to write their own liturgy. And that would almost certainly mean you need to seek out your poets and your wordsmiths, those poets and wordsmiths amongst us who could help craft and shape liturgy that your community could call their own, that narrates your own unique story at this unique time. And so often it's true, isn't it, that the artisans amongst us during tough times seem to find the way to unlock something unique and powerful amongst us. My suggestion would be this: choose or write liturgy carefully, especially if this is a new way of worshipping for you, and use a few pieces often. In this tough season of disorientation, I think there's going to be great comfort to be drawn from developing familiarity. Too much new liturgy, in the same way as too many new songs, could easily tire people out when they are already exhausted. And let's face it, so many of us are exhausted from so much other new in our lives. But whether it's self-written or not, let's take this opportunity to consider the value of well-crafted, theologically deep, pastorally sensitive, prophetically insightful words. We may not be able to share in singing at the moment, but we can share in speaking words, and you never know what this time could unlock for our fellow friends and our fellow worshippers. Friends and fellow worshippers. But to finish, there's probably not many of us who haven't sung or listened to or seen a video with that song, The Blessing, and it's been circulating right around the world in the last few months, and it's been hard not to see the breath of God on it. But before that was a song, of course, it was a liturgy. A said liturgy that's been said in communities at worship for generations and generations. And before it was a liturgy, it was a prayer, an Old Testament prayer, and it's called the Aaronic blessing. And maybe that's one of the prayers, one of the pieces of said liturgy you could share in when you meet for worship. And I'm going to say it, I'm going to pray it in just a moment, but before I do, let's just think about that word bless. So often that word bless is used in the wrong way. So often it means I've got lots of good things and comfort in my life, so I'm blessed. You know, I've got a nice house, so I'm blessed. I've got a great job, so I'm blessed. But for those who haven't got a nice job, they're not blessed, obviously. Or they haven't got a nice house, they're not blessed either. This is the wrong way of thinking about the word bless. And maybe Dallas Willard is helpful here, and he's someone who really thinks carefully about his words, and he says that to bless someone is to project goodness into them. So when we bless people, we project goodness into them. So as we use this prayer in worship, not only will that help us attend to the presence of God, but it'll be one of the ways we project goodness into people. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious to us. The Lord turn his face towards us and give us peace.